Behind the closed doors of a small little home in Münsterberg was horrors so unimaginable that people to this very day struggle to speak of them. Carol Denke was a man of trust, a man that the people of this town would turn to for help, completely unaware of the horrors that lurked within his home. What if I told you that this seemingly kind man wasn't offering a safe space, a place for the night to homeless people? What if I told you that he was murdering and cannibalising these vulnerable homeless individuals? Known as the Cannibal of Munsterberg, Carol Denke was not only murdering and cannibalising his own victims, he was preserving their flesh, pickling their flesh, and selling it as pickled pork to the town locals. Not only this, but the flesh and skin that remained from this man's victims, he was turning them into horrifying creations. This is the horrifying, bone-chilling case of Carol Denke, the Cannibal of Münsterberg. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup video. Oh yeah. Today, I am so excited. I am buzzing because I'm not only bringing you a true crime and makeup video, I am bringing you a homicidal history. It's been a while. It has been a while, and I'm coming back with Carol Denke. Him and Again should have been best pals. Actually, no, they shouldn't have. They should have designed a home together, though. I'd love to see what that crafty pair came up with. But that is besides the point, because this man is evil. A monster, a monstrous cannibal killer who gained the trust of people within his town and then spiking them with pickled people. I'm not even lying. If you're new here, hi, my name is Anna. I am a certified japper. I could talk all day about all things true crime. If true crime is your jam, I highly suggest that you subscribe, get that notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week with a brand new interesting true crime case. And if you're a regular here, you already know the drill. Get down in the likes, get down in the comments, make sure you're still subscribed, make sure that notification bell is still on, because from now on I am going to be posting a long case for you every single Sunday, and then the occasional additional bonus case on a Wednesday. If you haven't seen my previous posts, my work has been so incredibly busy. I feel like I've been burning out a bit, and it's just not feasible for me to be able to do the research, the editing, the uploading of 2 videos every single week. So we're going to do one very long video on a Sunday and then bonus uploads on whatever Wednesday I can manage. It might be every single week of a month, it might be twice a month on a Wednesday, and then every single week on the Sunday. But all you need to know is every single Sunday evening there will be an upload for you. Any details you need will be linked down below for you today. Social media handles, products I've used on my face, everything you need to know, it's all down there. Don't forget to leave your case suggestions in the comments. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into this crazy ass case of Carol Denke, the Cannibal of Münsterberg. Before I dive into the case, just a quick FYI for those who might be concerned right now, because sometimes I get comments and people are concerned. I'm not naked, okay? I wouldn't film naked despite some beliefs of some people in the comments. I don't film naked. It's just really warm in my room, and sometimes I just need to go for a little strapless number, nothing getting in the way, because I get overstimulated very quick if I have like too much touching me. Okay? Someone actually told me in the comments of, I want to say my Herbert Mullen video, they said that I loved myself because I was wearing like a halter neck top that revealed my shoulders. Sorry. I was just really warm that day and wanted to be less warm, so wore something that had my shoulders and my arms out. But thanks for the feedback. Anyway, today we're back. We have another interesting case, and it's a homicidal history, which I love, you love, we all love, and I'm so blimmin' excited to get into this one for you. And what is absolutely hilarious about the monster in today's case is that there's only 2 photographs known to exist of this man. Like, the camera was not his friend, right? He steered clear of the camera, and I understand why. But the best photo that was ever taken of this man was when he was dead. That's right. Not too long after his death was the most photogenic he's ever been. I am going to need you to hold my hand, walk through this case with me, because we're going to be trying to pronounce a lot of things that I don't know how to pronounce. And if you know me very well, then you know I have been on letspronounce.com listening to how you pronounce these places and these names, and I'm still no further ahead. I'm like Joey trying to learn French.
Je m'appelle. Je m'appelle.
Me poupou.
So, Carol Denke, he was born on August the 12th of 1860. We're going back in time, folks. 1860. And he was born in Kunzendorf, Silesia. And Silesia was in the Kingdom of Prussia, or somewhere along that line. Now, Carol, or Karl, you know, us Scottish people, we have a problem with the R's sounds. So, Karl, he was described as being an incredibly different and difficult child to raise, and it was his parents that said this. They really, really struggled with him. And honestly, for people like Carol's parents, it was not ideal to have a child who was troubled. They were very wealthy farmers. People looked up to them. They were upstanding citizens in the community. They were running a nursery. They've got like 8 children to look after. And then they've got Carol. So they are obviously trying to juggle their business, their farming, looking after all these children. And Carol was the type of child that just required extra attention, extra affection. You always had to have an eye on Carol, because you could never be quite sure what he was getting up to in his free time. And whilst we're saying Carol was a difficult child to raise, he was in no way like verbally abusive to people, but he would be very physically abusive, fighting back, kicking, punching, scratching, just, you know, no great behaviour. Now, Carol was known to lash out physically, and this is probably due to the fact that until the age of 7, he never really spoke to anyone. He had like selective mutism, and he would pick and choose when he would talk or who he would talk to. But it was rare that he would verbally communicate with anyone, so anything that he felt would be acted out through his physicality. Now, when Carol did become more confident and comfortable with verbal communication, he was described as being very quiet and softly spoken, and this seemed to be something that would follow him throughout his life. Now, by the age of 12 years old, Carol was causing some more difficulty and some more stress to his parents. He was running away from home a lot, very, very frequently. He's like, I'm going to go out to play, I'm going to go to the shop, and then he just never returned. So the police were involved multiple times. They would constantly have to bring him back home to his parents, who were worried sick, but over time the worriedness sort of just turned into complete anger, because why is he running away? We're doing our best. And despite this worry that he would cause his parents, or the upset and anger that he would cause his parents, he could never work out what it was that he had done so wrong that annoyed them so much. Carol was the kind of young child, and goes on to be the kind of man, that believes that any issues and problems in his life were caused by other people. Carol, he was never the issue. He was just doing his own thing. If people were bothered, that's their problem. And he honestly felt like people should mind their business. Carol's going to do what Carol wants to do. Boys will be boys, and people should just shut up. Stop whining. So, as we know, Carol at home doesn't really behave. Carol at school, not much better. Now, Carol at one point, he was getting grades that were deemed, I don't want to say impressive, but you know, they were relatively good. He seemed to do quite well. He was adjusting as he should. And then all of a sudden, it all just comes crashing down. right? He's getting the lowest grades in his class, he's struggling with all his work, he's putting in zero effort, he's no trying at all. And teachers noticed right away this change in him where it just seemed as though Carol had no great desire to do well in school. It became very clear to his teachers that Carol was just dying to be able to leave school, and they didn't really know what sort of future he would have because it was hard to tell what his work ethic would be like considering how he was in school. However, Carol, he would graduate from elementary school and right away he gets himself an apprenticeship as an apprentice gardener, and he was able to make himself quite a comfortable living by the age of 25. So, school's no everything. Sometimes school's not for everyone and they do better out with school, and then sometimes school's bad, life's bad. Now, when Carol's father had passed away, his brother had inherited the childhood home. What's left for Carol? Well, he would receive some money, and with this money, he decides that he's going to put it into his future, work at giving himself a promising future, and, possibly if he has a family, give them a good future as well. So once he has this money, he would purchase a sort of like piece of land, and coming from a home of wealthy farmers who did really well, it seemed as though Carol wanted to follow in his parents' footsteps. He's going to start running a farm of his own. However, unfortunately for Carol, it would seem that the farming apple fell very, very far from the tree. That gene, the farming gene, those farmer genes were not passed down. No. So the farming plan, the farming dream quickly falls on its ass, and Carol is just feeling so disheartened. So he's like, right, okay, farming's no worked, I'm going to have to look elsewhere for, promising prospects. So he decides to sell the piece of land back and get himself some of his money back. So once Carol has some of his money back, he decides he's going to buy himself, a relatively nice home. But this was another venture of his that was short-lived, because unfortunately for Carol, the inflation at that time basically forced him out of his house. He could not afford to pay what was required. Now, the house that he was living in, it had almost been turned into like an apartment complex, and he refused to leave that area, and he decided he would live on the ground floor apartment right next door to his house. So, he's basically still home, just it's a smaller scale. So Carol had also been able to open a shop that was really popular within the residents of the town. And this is a really small area, so there was like 8,000-ish people if you're lucky. And they would come and go for meat, belts, suspenders, shoelaces, everything that they could need. If you just witnessed a magic trick, like where did the brush go? It just fell in my hand, as usual. So yeah, like I was saying, Carol had been able to source leather belts, shoelaces, suspenders. He also sold jars of boneless pickled pork, and he had claimed that, this pickled pork was from goats and pigs, things like that. Carol would attend the weekly Roclaw market with his jars of pickled meat, and a lot of customers would say, oh, what kind of meat is that? Because tastes different. I've not really had anything like that before. It's good, but it's different. And Carol would reply and tell them, oh, it's pickled goat, it's pickled pig, it's pickled something. So alongside his shop, Carol, who was described by locals as being very mild-mannered and eccentric, he would also volunteer at the local church in Müsterberg. At this church, he would play the organ, he would hold crosses at funerals, and when he would carry the crosses for these funerals, he would meet and mingle with a lot of homeless people. And Carol, being the kind, mild-mannered, charitable man that he was deemed to be, he would often offer these homeless people a place to stay for a few nights, get in out of the cold, have some food, water, a place to sleep, and then go on your merry way in a few days. Now, this man had such an impact on the locals that they actually had terms of endearment when referring to Carol. They would call him Vater Denke or Papa Denke. And I think when people have these nicknames that sound really sweet and wholesome, it kind of makes you believe that them as a person would be quite sweet and wholesome. I mean, no one called Papa Denke is going to be a murderer, right? And this nice guy act that Carol was showing the world was just that, an act. There was not a nice bone in this man's body, and this kindness that he would show to the world was exactly how he would be able to lure his victims. His first known victim was a young woman by the name of Ida Launer, and on February the 21st of 1903, he would offer Ida a place to stay. You know, just being his usual kind, humble, charitable self. Carol had invited Ida into his home and told her, you know, make yourself comfortable, grab some food, grab a beverage, get yourself a cover, cuddle up in front of the fire. But as soon as Ida got in that house, Papa Denke had another plan in action. See, Ida would be brutally attacked by this seemingly kind man who people knew as someone who would never wrong anyone. Someone who was kind, someone who helped others. That was all an act. And the kind of person he was the kind of person that bludgeoned Ida Launer with an axe in his own home. Once he had finished murdering Ida, he dismembered her body, removed her bones, skinned her, and then any bits of cut up flesh, he would preserve this flesh in jars using curing salt and vinegar. You know, if you've not put two and two together yet, Ida Launer's flesh would be sold as pickled pork in his shop. People were eating pickled Ida. This man processed human flesh as if it was cattle produce. Listen, as you can probably imagine, the belts, suspenders, the shoelaces, all those leather items were not made from cowhide, like he had stated. They were made from human flesh. So not only was residents of the community eating Ida, they were probably wearing her as well. It's horrifying. So by 1906, Carol sort of comes to terms with the fact that he doesn't love this portrayal that he's having to keep up with. He doesn't want to be this kind, charitable man, at least not 24/7. So his membership with the church, he cancels it. Just as you would cancel the gym membership. He's like, do you know what? No for me. I'd rather lie on the sofa eating chips. Then on December the 21st of 1909, 25-year-old Emma Sander, she would disappear. And Carol was known to target these homeless individuals because he believed that no one would miss them. And we hear this all too often with these kind of sick monsters that prey on vulnerable individuals, believing that they're not going to be missed. But he was so wrong. Emma was missed. People noticed right away that Emma had disappeared. And whilst people notice that Emma's disappeared, they have no idea where she could possibly have disappeared to. But as we know, Papa Kidnapper, he's took her in under this guise of wanting to help her. And just as with Ida, Emma was taken into his home, believing that she could have comfort and safety, when really she would be attacked and bludgeoned to death, just like Ida. Now, whilst people were actively looking for Emma Sander, Carol somehow just flew under the radar, right? People did not suspect him, and there's a multitude of reasons why. I mean, we hear how the people talk about him, that he's mild-mannered, kind, charitable, when, you know, we know he's not that at all. But they were desperate to find out who had caused Emma harm, who had made her disappear. And this is when we're introduced to a man by the name of Edward Trotman. This man would be arrested in 1910 under suspicion for Emma's murder. Now, the reason being is because he had previously solicited, you know what, from Emma. And not only that, he was last seen with Emma shortly before she disappeared. So people believed that this man had killed her. In 1911, Edward Trotman, he would be sentenced to 15 years in prison for the murder of Emma Sander. And despite this arrest, despite this conviction, somehow the murders just kept coming. Now, Carol Denke, he would continue on his vicious, vile murder spree. His last known victim would be a young man by the name of Raucus Pollock in 1924, and it wouldn't be until December of 1924 that Carol Denke's murder spree would finally come to an end. So on December the 21st of 1924, Karl Denke, he approached a 35-year-old homeless man by the name of Vincenz Olivier. Now, Papa Denke, he had actually approached Olivier asking for help in drafting up this letter. This letter that seemed so important to him that he needed someone else to write it for him. He had promised Olivier if he had assisted in writing this letter, he would receive a very, very good payment. And at this moment in time, Vincenz Olivier is struggling financially, doesn't have any stability in his life. This money could help him turn things around. He could not turn down this opportunity. So Vincenz Olivier, he agrees to help Karol Denke write this letter that seems so important. And at first it does seem quite strange to him because Carol seems to be well spoken, he seems to be somewhat intelligent. Why would he need to source another man to help him write this letter? But ultimately, as I was saying, Vincenz Olivier was so desperate for money to be able to survive, to be able to eat. He didn't really give it too much thought, especially because Carol was known to be a charitable man. Maybe he's just making opportunity for Vincenz to make a bit of money. So Vincenz Olivier, he is now in Carol's home. He's sitting at a desk, he's been handed pen and paper, and he is getting ready to write under the dictation of Karol Denke. Whatever Karol Denke says, Vincenz Olivier has to write it. Now this letter deemed so important that he had to get someone else in to write it. It started off by saying, Adolf, du fetter wanst. And this made me chuckle like a little chuckleberry fin because this translates to Adolf, you fat slob. Listen. This guy's a monster and he's no one to talk about weight because he's not exactly the pinnacle of health himself, but addressing a letter to Adolf Hitler saying, Adolf, you fat slob, it's kind of iconic. I'm not gonna lie. And as many of us would, and as I did when I read it, Vincenz Olivier, he starts to giggle. Like he finds it hilarious and he almost tries to look at Carol like, do you seriously want me to write this? Like, are you just joking? But as he turns to look at Carol in this manner of, are you serious? He witnesses Carol lifting up an axe and swinging it toward his head. Now, thankfully, Vincenz Olivier, he reacts quickly. This man has the reflexes of a cat, and he is able to duck quickly enough that he wouldn't be killed, but not quick enough that he wouldn't be injured. And he ends up with this really deep 8-centimetre long gash right across his temple. Now, Vincenz Olivier would say that in this moment in time, his fight or flight adrenaline had kicked in, which stopped him from passing out. And he knew that he had to fight this big guy off of him if he wanted to survive. They are now wrestling on the floor. Vincenz is trying to wrestle this axe away from Carol. He's kicking, he's punching, he is fighting for his life. And thankfully, Vincenz is able to fight Carol off him and make his way to the front door, ultimately escaping this man's grasp. Now, a coachman by the name of Gabriel had been passing by and he had heard cries for help coming from what seemed to be Karol Denke's lodgings. So he decides like, oh, someone needs my help. Maybe it's Papa Denke himself. And he heads down. When he does, he meets Vincenz Olivier in the corridor, blood spewing and spurting from his head. And Vincenz very quickly blurts out, Vater Denke. He's able to tell Gabriel that Vater Denke had attacked him with an axe and tried to murder him before then falling to the ground unconscious. And this point boggled my mind. Like, I'm sorry, smack my ass and call me Judy, because how in the hell did Vincenz Olivier, the victim, end up being the one who was arrested? What? People of this small town did not believe for a second that Papa Denke, Vater Denke, the man who was known to be kind, charitable, charismatic, there is no way he would ever do this. The authorities didn't believe it. The townspeople didn't believe it. It was a complete shambles. And at this point, the only person who Vincenz Olivier really had on his side was himself. No one else believed him. They were saying to him, you know, we get that Papa Denke is very eccentric, very charismatic, and maybe makes him an easy target because he seems to be a bit different to everyone else. But he's no murderer. Well, they're in for a great shock, let me tell you that. So of course, the police, they're arresting this poor guy and they have no real reason to. So they end up arresting him for vagrancy, which is basically just him wandering around being homeless without employment. And they also charged him with panhandling, begging, you know, begging for money or begging for help. Like, do they think the screams for help was him asking for money when he is screaming help like he's begging for his life? Was this man not allowed to beg for his life? So Vincenz Olivier, he is taken to court. Unbelievable, I know. But he goes in front of the judge and he explains what happened to him in great detail, exactly what happened start to finish. He's like, you know, Carol Denke wanted me to write a letter for him. He got me to call Adolf fat, and then suddenly he was attacking me with an axe. I'm not sure why, blah, blah, blah. So he's going through all the details. And whilst the authorities and the townspeople didn't want to believe his claims and just wanted them dismissed, the judge, even though they're not fully convinced, he couldn't convict Vincenz Olivier as a perpetrator when possibly he is a victim. And he decides that he wants this investigated further. So he requests that Carol Denke is brought in for questioning. So Carol Denke is brought in and the investigators are trying to interrogate him, but no really, because they all seem to love Carol. So they're questioning him on the claims that have been made by Vincenz Olivier. And Carol Denke, in his own little way, kind of backs up the claims. But no really. He's going to put his own little spin on it, and this spin would be a huge web of lies. So Carol Denke, he tells investigators, truth be told, I did indeed attack Vincenz Olivier, but not for the reason that he's saying. I never once contacted him to write this letter. I actually attacked him with that axe out of fear that he was a violent burglar. He claims that this man came into his house without any permission and that he was trying to burgle Carol, and then Carol retaliated with the axe in an attempt to protect his property. That's his story. Now, police, they kind of believe Carol. They believe Carol more than they believe Vincenz Olivier, the homeless man. But at the same time, they need to corroborate his story before it can go in front of a judge, all that jazz. So they decide they're going to place Carol into a holding cell, hold him there whilst they have a wee think about it. So Carol Denke, he is placed into this holding cell. The police, they're talking amongst themselves, trying to work out who they think is telling the truth. At 11:30 p.m, that very same night, they go into Carol Denke's cell and they find him dead. Carol Denke had hung himself despite proclaiming his innocence. And this really got the wheels turning in the minds of the investigators, because why would this man, this seemingly innocent man, kill himself over what seemed to be a misunderstanding? This was given guilt. Had there been more to this story after all? Had Vincenz Olivier been the one telling the truth? They needed to know. So officers, they would be dispatched to Carol Denke's home, and the reason they were sent there was to see if they could find anything incriminating, anything that would back up the story of either Carol or Vincenz Olivier. And officers could not have mentally prepared themselves for what they were about to see. So as police had entered Carol's home, the very first thing that they're met with is this really overwhelming, horrifying scent of vinegar. The stench of vinegar is taking up space everywhere. It is filling the air, filling their nostrils, filling their lungs. And this vinegar was obviously from the pork pickling. you know, the pork pickling. And whilst it did turn the officers' stomachs at first, of course, as they knew he was in the pork pickling business, and a strong stench of vinegar was to be expected. However, what wasn't to be expected in this pork pickling business, you know, his pork pickling gig, was piles of bones hidden in the bedroom. Yeah, you know, pork pickling, we don't see that often. Bones accompanying it. Usually any animal bones would be disposed of after the pickling's been done, yet these bones were being hidden, and police realised very quickly that these bones aren't pig bones, they're not goat's bones, these are human bones. As police continued their search, they would just find more and more horrifying items. When they looked in Carol's closet, they had seen that he had blood-stained clothing just hanging up in his wardrobe. And let me tell you, some of this clothing wasn't in Carol's size. They also located human remains. There was human body parts hidden throughout his home. There was a ton of pickled meat jars, like shelves and shelves of pickled meat jars, and the police very quickly realise this man, he's not just committed 1 or 2 or 3, 4 murders. This man's been murdering for years. And God only knows how many victims this man truly has. And it was very clear to police as well that the many years he's been murdering people, he has also been cannibalising people. Now, these pickled meat jars, they would be sent off to a chemist at Roclaw, and they were sent for testing. Now, the testing carried out by these chemists did in fact reveal and confirm what the police had already suspected, and this was that the pickled pork was in fact pickled person, meaning that customers who have purchased and consumed meat from this store have actually been eating pickled people. Police had also located flesh being cured in 2 large tubs in brine. And not only that, they also found human fat being stored in 2 pots. They also found shoes, belts, suspenders, shoelaces. All of these were tested and concluded that these were made from tanned human skin. Yeah, the victims who had been skinned, their skin was used to make leather items. So not only was his loyal customers eating the pickled people who had been his victims of horrific murders, they were also wearing some of them. Now, they continue their search throughout Carol's home and they find this ledger, like this big booklet, and it basically details names of the victims and details of their killings. Now, there was at least 31 names within this book. However, the police have concluded, due to everything found in the home, that there would definitely be more victims. Carol's oldest victim would be 76 and his youngest victim would be 16 years old, just showing that he truly went for anyone and everyone. So some of the victims recorded within this ledger was Heinrich Brockmann, Nibel, Caspar Hubelek, Franz Nies, Johann Kloss, Ewald Koenig, Johann Groger, Robert Lorenz, Karol Sedel, Emil Exner, Joseph Nierlich, Adolf Salisch, Hermann Kuschenke, Paul Lux, Oskar Heinzel, Wilhelm Rathmann, Julius Busch, Friedrich Lazina, Karl Becker, Hermann Müller, Max Heidenreich, and Rokas Pollock. And whilst police have these names, as we've stated, the police do believe that there was many more victims. They believe at least 42, but they believe that number would be much higher than even that. And honestly, this guy and Ed Gein, they could have been the best of friends, because let me tell you, the police report was extensive to the things that they found in Carol Denke's home, and it's just very reminiscent of Ed Gein. Fair enough, no nipple belts and lampshades, but very, very reminiscent. So the report concluded that there was 16 femurs with 1 pair of remarkably strong ones, 2 pairs of very thin ones, 6 pairs and 2 left femurs, 15 medium-sized pieces of long bones, 4 pairs of elbow bones. There was 7 heads of radii, 9 lower parts of radii, 8 lower parts of the elbow, a pair of upper shin bones, a pair of lower elbows and radii, of which extremities still remain well connected, a pair of upper arms and a pair of upper arm heads, a pair of collar bones, 2 shoulder blades, 8 heels and ankle bones, 120 toes and phalanx, 65 feet and metacarpal bones, 5 first ribs and 150 pieces of rib. What? Why? Why? Now, do you remember Edward Trotman, the man who had been arrested and convicted for the murder of Emma Sander? Well, he was released from prison in 1922 for good behaviour. And of course, after the findings regarding Carol Denke and everything that he had committed, finding her name in his ledger, Edward would be exonerated of all charges and convictions. And he did, of course, go on to sue the police later on. Now, during World War II, this wooden shed in Carol Denke's garden had actually been destroyed. When this was destroyed, a Polish couple who had moved into his house since he, died, they found human skulls and bones that had been buried beneath this shed, concluding further the police's belief that there were so many more victims of Karl Denke. And Carol Denke is still remembered to this very day as the Cannibal of Münsterberg. But my loves, that is it for another true crime and makeup episode. I really hope you enjoyed this one. It was such an interesting case. I honestly could not get over the similarities between this guy and Ed Gein. Weird. Like, they honestly could have been best pals. Like, imagine the stuff that they would have made together. Shocking, horrifying, yet very intriguing. But I really hope you enjoyed this. I know you love the homicidal history, so I really wanted to give you one. If you do enjoy my content, please make sure you are subscribed, get the notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week with a brand new interesting true crime case. Unless you have any specific days that you would prefer, I will be releasing one very long video a week on a Sunday, and then every so often I will be jumping in with the bonus video on a Wednesday like this week. I thought I would ease us into the transition, so I was like, this week we're going to give you 2 videos, and then next week it'll be 1, the week after it might be 2 again. I'll keep you posted as and when, and eventually I will be back doing my 2 videos a week full time, but work is just crazy right now. So, if you can like, comment and subscribe and help me do this full time, I promise you all the content in the world. Don't forget any details you need regarding me, myself and I, social media handles, my case suggestion document, my email, everything is listed down below for you alongside the products used on my face today if there is anything you would like to pick up. But that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!